People think lighthouses are peaceful places, romantic, isolated, quiet. That's what I believed too, before I spent a night at Heceta Head Lighthouse on the coast of Florence, Oregon. I went there as a skeptic. I left convinced that some places remember pain, and some spirits never leave. I was 29 when I took a short contract job photographing historical landmarks along the Oregon coast. It sounded simple. Remote work, quiet towns, ocean views, exactly what I needed after a rough year. When my editor suggested Heceta Head Lighthouse, he laughed and said, "People say it's haunted. Might get you some extra atmosphere shots." I didn't think much of it. I'd heard the stories, of course. Everyone who's from Oregon has. They talk about a woman named Rue, a ghost said to roam the lighthouse keeper's house, a grieving mother, a presence that moves objects, a spirit that watches from the windows. But stories are just stories until you're alone in the dark. The lighthouse sits high above the Pacific, perched on a cliff where the wind never truly rests. Even during the day, the place feels heavy, like the air presses down on your chest. Tourists wandered the grounds while I took photos, laughing, pointing, enjoying the view. None of them noticed how quiet it became the moment you stepped inside the keeper's house. The silence there isn't peaceful, it's expectant. By late afternoon, the last visitors left. My permit allowed me to stay overnight to photograph the lighthouse beam after dark. The caretaker locked the gate behind me. "You staying in the house?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. He hesitated. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "If you hear footsteps, don't follow them." He didn't wait for my response. Night fell fast. The fog rolled in thick, swallowing the beam of the lighthouse until it felt like the world beyond the cliff no longer existed. Inside the keeper's house, I set up my gear. Old wooden floors, narrow hallways, rooms that felt too cold, even with the heater running. Around 10:30 p.m., I noticed something strange. The smell, a faint scent of flowers, sweet, soft, completely out of place. There were no flowers in the house. I checked every room, nothing. The smell faded, then returned, stronger this time, drifting through the hallway, like someone had just walked past me. I laughed nervously and told myself it was my imagination. That's when I heard the first sound, footsteps, slow, measured, coming from the upstairs bedroom. I froze. The house was locked. I was alone. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. The footsteps stopped. I stood there for a full minute, heart pounding, listening to the ocean crash far below. Then the floor creaked again. One step, then another. They were coming down the stairs. I grabbed my flashlight and aimed it toward the staircase. Nothing. The steps ended at the bottom, but no one appeared. I didn't sleep after that. Sometime after midnight, I finally dozed off on the couch, camera still around my neck. I woke up because something was touching my shoulder. Not grabbing, just resting there. I couldn't move. The room felt ice cold, like the heat had completely shut off. I opened my eyes. No one was there. But the smell of flowers was overwhelming now. I sat up, breathing hard, when I noticed the front door. It was open. I know it was locked. The wind howled through the doorway, and for a moment, I thought I saw a figure standing just outside, facing the ocean. A woman. Still. Silent. I whispered, "Hello?" She didn't turn around. Instead, she spoke, not out loud, inside my head. He never came back. I don't remember standing up, but suddenly I was at the doorway, staring out into the fog. The figure was closer now. I could make out the shape of her dress, long and old-fashioned, swaying, even though there was no wind touching her. Her hair hung down her back. She raised one hand and pointed toward the cliff. "I waited," the voice said. "I waited until the light went out." My chest tightened. I felt overwhelming sadness. Grief so heavy, it made my knees weak. Tears streamed down my face, and I didn't know why. I took a step forward, then another. Some part of me knew I shouldn't. Some part of me was screaming to stop. That's when the lighthouse beam flared brighter than I'd ever seen it. The light swept over us. The figure vanished. The cold lifted, and I collapsed onto the floor. Morning came like nothing had happened. Sunlight, birds, tourists returning. The caretaker found me sitting on the floor, pale and shaking. "You saw her, didn't you?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer. He nodded anyway. "She doesn't hurt people," he said. "She just wants someone to remember." I left Heceta Head that morning and never went back. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I smell flowers, and I swear I hear footsteps moving slowly down a staircase that isn't there. I took the job because I needed the money. That's the honest truth. When you're desperate, you stop asking questions you should absolutely be asking, like why a historical site needs overnight security and why the pay is higher than anything else in the area. The place was Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Closed since 1971. Abandoned, decaying, and widely considered one of the most haunted prisons in the United States. I was 32, recently divorced, and sleeping on my brother's couch. When I saw the job posting, I didn't hesitate. The description was simple: night patrol, report vandalism, no visitors after dark. During orientation, the supervisor, an older guy named Frank, walked me through the cell blocks. Crumbling stone walls, rusted bars, long corridors that seemed to stretch forever. "This place messes with people," he said casually. "If you hear something, you log it. You don't investigate." I laughed. Frank didn't. Eastern State was designed to break people. Built in 1829, it pioneered solitary confinement. Prisoners were locked alone for years. No talking, no contact, no light. Just silence. Many went insane. Some never recovered. As Frank explained this, we passed cell block 12, where the air suddenly felt colder. My breath fogged, even though it was summer. "Equipment glitch," Frank muttered when I pointed it out. But the temperature didn't rise again. My first night shift started at 11 o'clock p.m. The gates slammed shut behind me, and the echo rolled through the prison like a warning. I did my first patrol without incident. Just footsteps, shadows, and the sound of my radio crackling with static. At exactly 1:17 a.m., I heard a voice. Soft, close. It whispered my name. I stopped walking. The voice came again, clearer this time. "Hey, guard." It was coming from cell block 4. I raised my flashlight and swept the corridor. Empty. The cells were sealed decades ago. No power, no access. I told myself it was audio bleed from nearby traffic. Philadelphia never really sleeps. Still, I logged it. Frank's response came back over the radio. "Copy that. Don't approach the cells." I didn't ask why. The second incident happened around 3 a.m. I was near the old shower area when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, barefoot, matching my pace. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I turned around. No one. Then something brushed past me. Cold air, sharp and sudden, like a body passing inches away. The smell hit me next. Metallic, old, like rust and damp stone, and something else I couldn't place. I felt watched, not from one direction, from everywhere. By my third shift, I started noticing marks. Scratches on the walls that hadn't been there before. Handprints in the dust inside sealed cells. And once, just once, I saw a figure standing at the end of cell block 7. Tall, thin, wearing something striped. When I blinked, it was gone. I didn't log that. I should have. The worst night came a week later. Storm outside. Thunder shaking the windows. My radio cut out completely around 2:40 a.m. That's when I heard the screaming. Not loud, not sudden, low, continuous, like someone crying without lungs. It came from cell block 12 again. I stood frozen, flashlight shaking in my hand. The screaming turned into words. I didn't do it. Over and over. I didn't do it. I backed away, heart racing, when something grabbed my wrist. Not hard, just enough to stop me. The touch was freezing. I looked down. There was no hand, but red marks bloomed on my skin, fingers tightening where nothing existed. I tore myself free and ran. I quit the next morning, didn't give notice, didn't collect my last paycheck. Frank didn't try to stop me. As I left, he said quietly, "Some of them get attached." I didn't ask who he meant. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. That night, in my brother's apartment, I woke up at exactly 1:17 a.m. The room was ice cold. The smell of rust filled the air. And from the corner of the room, I heard a familiar voice whisper, "I didn't do it." I don't work night shifts anymore, and I don't visit abandoned places, because some prisons don't lock their doors to keep people in. They do it to keep something from getting out. Everyone knows the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. It's famous for inspiring The Shining. Tourists come for the views. Paranormal investigators come for the ghosts. I came because I thought fear was exaggerated. I was wrong. I arrived at the Stanley just before sunset, after a long drive through the Rocky Mountains. From a distance, the hotel looked peaceful, almost welcoming. White walls glowing in the fading light, wide porches, tall windows reflecting the mountains. But as soon as I stepped inside, something felt off. Not threatening, just wrong. The lobby was quiet, too quiet for a hotel that size. The air felt heavy, like it hadn't moved in years. The woman at the front desk smiled politely. "Staying the night?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Just one." Her smile lingered half a second too long. "Room 428, she said, sliding the key across the counter. "Top floor." I later learned that room wasn't normally assigned. The elevator ride felt endless. As it climbed, the lights flickered. Just once, but enough to make my stomach tighten. When the doors opened, the hallway was empty. Long, narrow, and carpeted in deep red. No windows, no sound. Even my footsteps felt muted, like the hotel was swallowing them. Room 428 was at the very end of the hall. When I unlocked the door, a cold wave of air rolled out to greet me. The room itself looked normal, old-fashioned but clean. Large bed, writing desk, a single lamp casting a yellow glow. I dropped my bag and laughed quietly to myself. "Get a grip," I muttered. That's when the closet door creaked open. I stared at it, slowly, silently. The door stopped halfway. I walked over and pushed it shut, telling myself it was pressure change, old hinges, anything logical. I locked it. Then I noticed something else. The room smelled used. Not dirty, occupied. Like someone had just been there moments ago. Around 11:30 p.m., I turned off the lights and tried to sleep. That was my first mistake. The darkness in that room felt thick. Not empty, crowded. I lay awake, listening to the old building groan and settle. Then I heard footsteps. Not outside, inside the room. Slow pacing, back and forth, near the foot of the bed. I sat up, heart pounding, and flipped on the lamp. Nothing. The room was exactly as before, but the feeling hadn't left. Someone was still there. At exactly 2:14 a.m., I woke to the sound of breathing. Not mine. It was shallow, uneven, close. I didn't open my eyes. I couldn't. The weight on the mattress shifted, like someone sitting down beside me. The air turned icy. The breathing stopped. Then a voice whispered, right next to my ear, "You took my room." I screamed and rolled out of bed, hitting the floor hard. The lamp shattered. The room went dark. In that darkness, I heard the footsteps again, faster now, moving toward the bathroom. The door slammed shut. I ran for the light switch. When the lights came back on, The bathroom door was wide open, empty, but the mirror was fogged, and written across it, traced by a finger from the inside, were the words, "Get out." I didn't pack. I didn't grab my bag. I ran barefoot into the hallway. The red carpet stretched endlessly in both directions, identical, disorienting. The exit sign flickered. I ran toward it. Behind me, doors began to open. One by one, slow creaks. Dark rooms revealing darker shapes. Whispers followed me down the hall. "You don't belong here. You're in our room." The elevator doors wouldn't open. I slammed the button again and again. The whispers turned into laughter. Finally, the doors slid apart. I dove inside and mashed the lobby button. As the doors closed, I saw someone standing at the end of the hallway. Tall, motionless, watching. The lobby was empty when I reached it. No staff, no guests, just silence. I burst through the front doors and didn't stop running until my lungs burned. I slept in my car that night. The next morning, I returned because I needed answers. The woman at the front desk looked at me calmly. "You checked out early," she said. "You put me in a haunted room," I snapped. Her expression didn't change. "Room 428 has been empty for years," she replied. "Guests don't usually last long." I swallowed. Who was in there with me? She leaned closer and lowered her voice. "Some rooms remember," she said. "And some don't like being disturbed." I still have nightmares about that night. About waking up unable to move. About breathing that isn't mine. And sometimes when I stay in hotels now, I hear footsteps pacing at the foot of my bed. Waiting. They call it Hoia Baciu Forest, just outside Cluj-Napoca, Romania. Some people call it the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. Others call it cursed. Locals call it something else entirely. They call it a place you do not enter after dark. I didn't listen. I was backpacking through Eastern Europe, documenting strange locations for a travel blog. Old villages, abandoned buildings, places with stories people whispered instead of told. Everywhere I went in Romania, someone eventually mentioned Hoia Baciu, disappearing shepherds, electronics malfunctioning, voices with no source, people entering healthy and leaving sick, confused or not leaving at all. When I told my host in Cluj that I wanted to visit the forest at night, she stopped smiling. "Daytime is already risky," she said. "At night, the forest notices you." I parked my car just past the tree line at 11:42 p.m. The forest swallowed sound. No insects, no wind, no animals. Even my footsteps felt muffled, like the ground didn't want to echo them. The trees grew crooked, twisted unnaturally, as if something had bent them out of shape long ago and never let them recover. Within minutes, my phone lost signal. Then my flashlight flickered. I walked deeper. The darkness felt layered, like I wasn't just surrounded by night, but by something thick, something watching. That's when I noticed the clearing, a perfect circle where nothing grew, no grass, no weeds, just dead earth. I stepped closer, and the pressure hit my chest. Not pain, presence. The air vibrated, almost humming, and my ears rang like I'd stepped too close to a power line. I felt dizzy. Then I heard my name, not spoken, called from behind me. I turned. The forest looked different. The path I came in on was gone. The trees were closer now, leaning inward, closing gaps that hadn't been there seconds earlier. I tried walking back the way I thought I'd come. The forest answered. Branches cracked. Footsteps mirrored mine, always just out of sync. At exactly 12:17 a.m., my camera turned on by itself. The screen showed me standing in the clearing, from above, watching myself. Behind the version of me on the screen, something moved between the trees. Tall, thin, its limbs bent the wrong way. When I spun around in real life, nothing was there. But the camera kept recording. Whispers filled the forest. Not words, thoughts. You saw us. You noticed. You stay. My head pounded. I felt memories slipping. Small ones at first. Names. Dates. Why I'd come here. I dropped to my knees, gripping the dirt, trying to ground myself. That's when the humming stopped. The silence became absolute. And something stepped into the clearing. It didn't walk. It unfolded. Its shape shifted constantly, like it couldn't decide what it was supposed to be. Its face, if it had one, reflected mine. Not exactly. Older. Hollow. Like someone who had stayed too long. It tilted its head. And suddenly, I knew something without being told. The forest doesn't kill everyone. Sometimes it keeps them. I don't remember running. I remember falling. I remember branches tearing at my skin. I remember screaming until my voice disappeared. Then, headlights, my car, right where I'd left it. The forest behind me looked normal again, silent, waiting. I drove straight out of there without stopping. Didn't sleep for 2 days. Didn't check my footage until I was back home. The camera file lasted exactly 35 minutes. Most of it was darkness, but near the end, there was audio. My voice, whispering, "I'm still here." That was 3 years ago. Sometimes, when I walk alone at night, I hear humming. Sometimes my reflection lags behind me, and sometimes I wake up knowing things I don't remember learning. Hoia Baciu didn't follow me home. It let part of me leave. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum looks like a castle. That's the first thing people say. Tall stone walls, arched windows, long wings stretching out like arms, frozen in time. From the outside, it almost feels dignified, historic, even beautiful. But beauty doesn't mean mercy, and that building has never been merciful. I went there because I thought I could handle it. I'd already explored abandoned houses, old prisons, forgotten tunnels. I told myself fear was just your mind filling in gaps. That if you stayed logical, stayed grounded, nothing could really touch you. The asylum proved me wrong. Trans-Allegheny opened in 1864. It was built to hold 250 patients. At its worst, it held over 2,400. Men, women, children, stacked into rooms meant for a fraction of that number. People were restrained, isolated, forgotten. Treatments ranged from ice baths to electric shocks to surgeries that erased personalities instead of healing them. Many patients died here. Most were never claimed. Some never even had names recorded. They were buried on the grounds. Others never left at all. I joined a late-night historical tour, the last one before closing. There were 6 of us, plus a guide named Eric. He was calm, professional, and very clear about one rule. If you hear voices after midnight, he said, don't answer them. Someone laughed. Eric didn't smile. By 11:45 p.m., the group thinned out. 2 people left early. Another couple stayed near the entrance. That left me, one other guy, and Eric. We were deep in the 4th floor, the most overcrowded wing, when Eric checked his watch. 10 minutes, he said. Then we head back. That's when the door slammed, hard, behind us. At first, we all thought it was wind, until we realized there were no open windows on that floor. Eric tried the handle. Locked. That wasn't supposed to happen. Radio static crackled when he tried to call downstairs. No signal. The lights flickered, then steadied. But the hallway felt darker somehow, like the walls were absorbing what little light remained. Then we heard it. Footsteps. Running, bare feet slapping against tile, coming from the patient wards. The other guy panicked and shouted, "Hello?" Eric snapped at him. "Don't do that." The footsteps stopped. Then a voice answered, right behind us. "Are we being checked tonight?" My blood went cold. The voice wasn't echoing. It wasn't distant. It was right there, spoken softly, patiently, like someone used to waiting. Eric backed away slowly. "That ward's been sealed since the 70s, he whispered. The door at the end of the hall began to open, slowly, with effort, as if something weak was pulling it. Inside the ward, rows of rusted beds lined the walls. Leather restraints still hung from some of the frames. The smell was unbearable. Old rot, damp stone, something organic that never fully decayed. I felt pressure behind my eyes. A headache bloomed instantly. Then I noticed the shadows. They weren't matching our movements. They lagged, stretched. Some stood where no one was. "I need help," a voice said from the far end of the room. A woman's voice, calm, tired. "I've been very good." A bed creaked, then another, then dozens, as if invisible bodies were sitting up all at once. Eric whispered, "We're leaving, now." We turned back toward the hallway. It was gone. Where the corridor should have been was a solid stone wall. No seam, no doorway, just cold, unbroken rock. The lights went out. Complete darkness. Then the screaming started. It came from everywhere. Men, women, children, crying, begging, laughing, arguing with people who weren't there. I felt hands brush my arms, my shoulders, not grabbing, guiding, positioning. Someone whispered directly into my ear, "Don't struggle. It makes the treatment last longer." The lights snapped back on, but the room was no longer abandoned. Every bed was occupied. People sat upright, staring at us. Their eyes were wrong, too focused, too aware. Their mouths moved out of sync with the voices filling the room. One of them stood, then another. They wore old hospital gowns, stained and torn. A nurse stepped forward. Her uniform was outdated, her face blank, clipboard in hand. "Admissions are late," she said flatly. She looked at me. Diagnosis pending. I felt myself pulled backward. My legs moved without permission. Toward an empty bed. Straps dangled from the sides. The nurse leaned close. "You'll feel calmer once you stop remembering," she said. I screamed. Everything collapsed into noise and pressure and darkness. Then, silence. Cold tile against my cheek. Morning light through broken windows. Eric shaking my shoulder. "You're okay," he said. "You're okay." The other guy was gone. Eric said he never made it into the ward with us. Security footage showed me standing alone in the hallway for 37 minutes, talking to no one, smiling, nodding. I left that day. I never went back. But sometimes, when I wake up at night, I forget where I am. For a few seconds, I expect restraints. I expect rounds. And sometimes I hear a nurse's voice in the dark saying, "Still awake?" Most people know Centralia, Pennsylvania, as that burning town. The one with smoke rising from the ground. The abandoned streets. The graffiti highway. What people don't talk about is why no one stays after dark. I did. And Centralia noticed. I arrived in Centralia in late October, just as the mountains were shedding the last of their color. The town sits quietly in the Appalachian Range, surrounded by dense forest and rolling hills that block cell service and swallow sound. By official numbers, fewer than 5 people still live there. Unofficially, it feels crowded. The coal fire beneath Centralia has been burning since 1962, an underground inferno that will continue for another 200 years, slowly hollowing the land from below. Homes were condemned, streets collapsed, families were forced out, but not everyone left. Some stayed because they had nowhere else to go. Some stayed because they didn't want to, and some were never given the choice. I parked near what used to be the town center, just before sunset. The air smelled wrong, not just smoke, but sulfur and damp earth, like something breathing beneath my feet. Steam rose from cracks in the road. The silence was overwhelming. No birds, no wind, just the faint hiss of the ground exhaling. I walked past the remains of St. Ignatius Church, its foundation half swallowed by the land. A sign nearby warned of unstable ground and toxic gases. Someone had scratched words into the metal. "It's not the fire." As darkness crept in, the temperature dropped fast. Fog rolled through the streets, hugging the ground unnaturally low. It didn't drift, it crawled. That's when I heard the footsteps. Not close, scattered, like multiple people walking through leaves, just out of sight. I called out, expecting maybe another explorer. No answer. Instead, a distant voice replied, "Martha." The name echoed strangely, stretched thin by the hills. Then, another voice answered back, "I'm here." The fog thickened. Street signs disappeared. I realized I could no longer see my car. Panic crept in slowly, like the town was letting it settle instead of forcing it. I followed what I thought was the main road, but the layout felt wrong. Streets bent where they shouldn't. Houses appeared where maps said nothing existed. Then I saw the people. They stood in doorways that led nowhere. Men in soot-stained clothes, women clutching children, faces pale, eyes glassy. None of them moved. Their mouths opened in unison. "Why did you come back?" My head throbbed. Images flooded my mind that weren't mine. Families coughing, children screaming as the ground split open, smoke filling bedrooms at night. A man stepped forward. His face was burned, not freshly, but old, healed wrong. "The fire didn't take us," he said calmly. "It just made room." I backed away, my foot sinking into soft ground. Too soft. The earth shifted beneath me, warm and unstable. Below, I heard something move. The town began to hum. Low, vibrational, the ground pulsed like a heartbeat. Steam burst from cracks around me, forming shapes in the fog. Faces screaming silently, mouths stretched wide in agony. I ran. The streets twisted. Every direction led me deeper. Every breath tasted like ash. That's when I realized the truth. Centralia isn't abandoned. It's contained. I stumbled into an old residential block where houses leaned toward each other, unnaturally, like they were listening. From inside one, a child laughed. I froze. The laughter turned into coughing, then screaming. The door swung open. Inside, the house was intact, frozen in time. Furniture untouched, dinner plates still on the table. A family sat inside. They looked up at me together. "You shouldn't be breathing that," the father said gently. The mother smiled. "Stay," she said. "The fire keeps us warm." The floor cracked beneath me. Heat surged upward. Hands grabbed my ankles, not pulling me down, holding me still. Whispers filled my ears. "Don't leave us alone again." The ground glowed faintly red. I screamed until my throat burned. I woke up on the highway, miles outside town at dawn. My shoes were melted. My clothes reeked of smoke. Authorities said I'd been found unconscious near a sinkhole. They told me I was lucky. They told me people hallucinate in Centralia all the time. They didn't explain the burns on my ankles shaped like fingerprints. I don't sleep well anymore. Sometimes, when it's quiet, I hear humming beneath the floor. Sometimes, my house smells like smoke. And sometimes, when fog rolls through the mountains, I hear voices calling names I don't recognize, waiting for someone else to come back. When people imagine Alaska, they think of wide skies, clean air, and silence that feels peaceful. But silence can also feel like being watched. I learned that in a remote cabin near Lake Minchumina, deep in Alaska's interior, so far from civilization that maps stop being useful and radios stop working. I went there to disappear for a while. Something else was already there. The cabin wasn't supposed to be special. It was listed as a seasonal backcountry shelter maintained for hunters and researchers. No electricity, no running water, just logs, a wood stove, and isolation in every direction. The nearest settlement was over 40 miles away. No roads, only forest, frozen lakes, and sky. I arrived by bush plane in early November, just before winter fully sealed the land shut. The pilot dropped me off, unloaded my gear, and didn't linger. "You got 3 days before the weather turns," he said. "If I don't come back on time, don't wait." That should have been my first warning. The cabin sat at the tree line, facing the lake. Smoke stains darkened the chimney, evidence of many cold nights survived by strangers I would never meet. Inside, it smelled like old wood and iron. Simple layout: 1 room, 2 bunks, a table, a stove, and a guest book. It sat open on the table, weighed down by a rusted lantern. I didn't touch it at first. I unloaded my supplies, chopped wood, got the fire going. Outside, daylight faded faster than expected. In Alaska, darkness doesn't arrive, it drops. By 5 p.m., the world beyond the cabin no longer existed. That night, the silence pressed in. No wind, no animals, just the crackle of the fire and my own breathing. Around midnight, I heard something outside. Not footsteps, circling. Slow crunches in the snow, stopping whenever I moved. I told myself it was an animal. Moose, wolf, anything reasonable. But animals don't walk in perfect circles. I barely slept. Morning came, gray and heavy, clouds hanging low over the lake like a lid. I decided to check the guest book, mostly to distract myself. The first few entries were normal. Names, dates, notes about weather and supplies. Then the tone changed. Second night, still hear it outside. It doesn't like the dark. It waits. If you're reading this, don't answer it. My stomach tightened. Then I saw the last entry. It was dated 2 days before my arrival. No name. Just one sentence. He thinks he's alone. That afternoon, I found footprints near the cabin. Bare feet, human, leading from the tree line to the door, stopping inches from the threshold, not entering. The second night was worse. I woke to knocking, not aggressive, polite. 3 slow taps on the cabin door. I didn't move. The knocking came again. Then a voice, soft, familiar. It sounded like me. "Hey," it said. "Let me in. It's cold." My heart hammered so hard, it hurt. I stayed perfectly still. After a long pause, the voice sighed. Then I heard footsteps retreat into the forest. The temperature dropped sharply overnight. The fire died faster than it should have. At dawn, the lake was frozen solid, something that shouldn't have happened that quickly. I tried my radio. Static. Tried my phone. Dead. That's when I noticed the guest book again. It was open to a new page. Fresh handwriting. My handwriting. Third day, it's learning. Panic set in. I packed my gear, deciding to hike toward higher ground and hope for signal. As soon as I stepped outside, the forest felt wrong. Trees leaned inward. Sounds felt delayed, like echoes arriving before actions. Then I saw it, standing at the far edge of the lake. A figure shaped like a man, but stretched, too tall, too thin. Its face was blank, smooth. It lifted its arm and mimicked my wave perfectly. I ran back inside and slammed the door. The knocking started immediately. Harder now, impatient. The voice dropped the act. "You already let me in," it said. I looked at the guest book. The final page was filled now. Dates stretching years into the past. Different names. Same handwriting. All ending with the same line. "Stayed too long." The fire went out. The cold became unbearable. I wrapped myself in blankets, shaking uncontrollably. From outside, I heard the door open. Slow footsteps crossed the floor. Stopped beside me. A breath near my ear. We share the cabin now. I woke up in a hospital in Fairbanks. Hypothermia. They said I'd been found miles from the cabin, barefoot, walking toward the forest. The cabin burned down. No guest book recovered. No tracks found. I don't go into isolated places anymore. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I hear knocking. 3 slow taps. And a voice that sounds exactly like mine, asking to come in. There are places in the world that were never meant to be silent. Poveglia Island, just off the coast of Venice, is one of them. Tour boats pass it every day. Locals glance at it and look away. No one docks there. No one explores it officially. The Italian government sealed it off decades ago, calling it unsafe. That's not the real reason. Poveglia doesn't want visitors, and the dead there don't like being forgotten. Poveglia is small, barely visible through the fog most mornings, but its history is enormous. For centuries, it was a quarantine island. Ships suspected of carrying plague victims were diverted there. The sick were removed. The healthy were separated. Fires burned day and night. They say over 100,000 people died on that island. Later, a psychiatric hospital was built there. Treatments were primitive. Records were incomplete. Patients vanished. When the hospital shut down, the island was abandoned. But abandonment doesn't erase memory. It preserves it. I reached Poveglia just after sunrise. A fisherman agreed to drop me off. No questions asked, no receipt. He refused to stay. "You have 6 hours," he said. "When the fog lifts, I come back. If you're not ready, I leave." Before pushing away, he made the sign of the cross. That should have been enough. The island felt wrong immediately. Not threatening, not violent, just aware. The air was heavy and still. No birds, no insects. Even the water lapped against the shore without rhythm. Buildings leaned inward, collapsed but not decayed, like they were waiting to be used again. I walked toward the old hospital. Every step felt watched. Inside, the smell hit me first. Not rot, ash, old, ingrained, layered into the walls. The halls were narrow. Paint peeled in long strips that reminded me of skin. Rusted gurneys still sat where they'd been abandoned, wheels locked in place. Then I heard footsteps. Not echoes, not mine. Bare feet on stone. Slow, measured, following. I told myself it was my imagination. That's what everyone does at first. Then I saw the writing on the wall, scratched deep into the plaster. Non era una cura. It wasn't a treatment. The temperature dropped sharply as I moved deeper into the building. I reached what used to be a ward. Beds lined the walls, straps still attached. I felt pressure behind my eyes, images that weren't memories, forcing their way in. People coughing, people begging, people screaming in languages I don't speak but somehow understood. I staggered back. That's when the bell rang. Poveglia used to have a bell tower. It hasn't rung in decades, but I heard it clearly. One slow toll, then another. Each vibration traveled through my bones, not my ears. With every ring, I felt something inside me wake up. I tried to leave. The path back to the shore was gone. Fog rolled in thick and fast, swallowing landmarks I'd passed minutes earlier. The island felt larger now, expanded, stretched. Figures appeared in the mist. Not solid, not quite human. They stood motionless, watching, waiting. Their mouths moved silently. I understood them anyway. Stay, remember, witness. I reached the plague pits, mass graves, now overgrown. The ground felt warm beneath my feet. I heard whispers rising from below the soil, not screaming, not pleading, reciting names, hundreds of them, thousands, and then my own. I collapsed. The island pulsed. I felt hands pressing against my back, holding me down. Not violently, but firmly, like orderlies, like caretakers. A voice whispered directly into my thoughts. You walked onto sacred ground. The fog lifted suddenly. I saw the fisherman's boat in the distance. I ran. Behind me, the bell rang again, louder this time. Not calling the dead, calling me. I reached the shore just as the boat turned away. I screamed. He stopped, pulled me aboard, wouldn't look at me. Back in Venice, doctors said I'd been dehydrated, disoriented. They said poveglia causes hallucinations. They didn't explain why my clothes smelled like smoke. They didn't explain why my heartbeat synced with church bells. I don't sleep well anymore. When bells ring at night, I feel the pull. Sometimes I dream of fog and voices reciting names. Sometimes I hear one name spoken last. Mine. Poveglia didn't trap me. It marked me. And one day, it will ring again.